Hello, my most devout followers, and welcome back to the Celestial Perch. I apologize I've been gone for so long. I was traveling all of last week for work, on a work trip, and traveled back over the weekend, so I've only recently been able to start working on videos again. In order to ease myself back into it, I'm going to be starting off with a new series that'll be a bit easier to work on, just a lot shorter in general. It'll be going over the government authorities. We're going to be working our way through democracy, oligarchy, dictatorial, and imperial governments, all of their benefits, and in terms of the structure, we're going to be looking at the benefits, of course, the election types, mandates versus agendas, civics, and ethics that are specific to that government authority. But without further ado, let's dive in and take a look at democracy first. So, looking at democracy, we have several benefits up here on the screen. We have a ruler term of 10 years. We can change the government. We have mandates instead of agendas. We have a re-election. And our main benefit for picking this government authority is that we get plus 50% automatic resettlement chance. Now, looking more specifically at that plus 50% automatic resettlement chance, it is something that is useful and important within Stellaris. As noted within the game, a pop that is sapient, unemployed, and free have a chance to resettle to another planet with available housing and jobs. Per month, this is a 10% chance per pop. As well, with slave processing facilities, this will also apply to slaves and robots that are within servitude. Now, the democracy government authority will increase this from 10% to 15%, making it ever so more likely to occur each month per pop. Now, the usefulness of this benefit is debatable. Increased automatic resettlement chance doesn't have very much use within the early to mid game. Most of the time, you're going to be building enough buildings on your colonies, on your capital, to be able to house and give those pops jobs. All of the pops that you're going to be moving are going to be done by you. You're going to be moving them to colonies when needed, as long as you have the ability to do so, in order to get those colonies to 10 population as soon as possible to upgrade their capital building. Most of the time, you're not going to want those pops sitting, waiting around to automatically resettle. This really comes into its full strength near the late game. You have hundreds of pops, and you might take over people, and you just might want to wait and let them automatically resettle, giving democracy a lot of power within the late game. But as mentioned before in my other videos, benefits that assist you in the early game tend to be a lot better than benefits that assist you in the late game. Democracy does have a distinct weakness here in that as long as you're willing to put in a modicum of effort within the early game, you can forego this benefit almost entirely, and it really won't help you out that much. Now, looking at other aspects of democracies, they also have elections. Now, elections occur every 10 years as opposed to 20 for the oligarchic governments, and also, we can only support a leader rather than outright choosing them. We don't have to spend as much unity to support a leader, but it does not guarantee that we get it. We could be missing out on some really beneficial ruler traits, which can be a pretty big downside, especially if you end up with a really crappy leader at a point where you desperately need a good leader. As well, normally when you complete a mandate, the game will tell you that that will increase the impact on re-election, but according to some bugs, it doesn't appear to actually have an impact on that right now. So overall, elections are kind of a roundabout way to get a leader, and in Stellaris, a game where you're trying to min-max as many modifiers as you can, if you're trying to play optimally, and also if you're just trying to play in a roleplay sense, it can be annoying to lose a leader that you like. And speaking of unoptimal, democracies also have mandates as opposed to agendas. So agendas are permanent benefits that are given to a specific leader that dictatorial, imperial, and oligarchic governments will have, and stick with them for life. Where mandates are different kind of quests that you have to complete for your democratically elected leaders, and once you complete it at the end of their term, so for example, I'll have some up here on screen. If you complete this by the end of their term, then you get 50 to 1,000 unity, 6 months of your unity production total, and then when you're re-elected again or you get a new leader, they will have a different mandate, and these vary greatly and can be either very easy to complete or quite a nuisance. And the benefit here as well, only being unity, is significantly worse than that of an agenda. Whereas agendas can increase your energy production, your mineral production, pop growth speed, reduce the cost to build ships. Agendas have a lot more just kind of flexibility as well as power, and mandates require you to do stuff and give you less. So democracies are really coming in weak here. Now, for democracies, there are two other aspects I'd like to look at. The first being civics. In terms of civics that are exclusive to democracies, Beacon of Liberty and parliamentary systems. Up here on the screen, I would say that these two are both quite solid, especially parliamentary systems. You're playing for a unity type of build, where you might be taking democracy, parliamentary systems, egalitarian, and spiritualist. You can crank out probably the most unity of any empire in the game within the first 10 to 20 years. And you don't have to stick with any of these, so you can eventually pivot out of them into something a bit more powerful. It just gives you quite a bit of power within the early game if you're going for that unity rush. Beacon of Liberty is still good, it just doesn't have as much power in the early game. It's more of a late game kind of civic. Still powerful in its own right, more so in single player. But I would say that both of these are good civics, probably within the B to A tier. And that definitely brings democracy into a better light than it otherwise would be. And lastly, when looking at democracies, we have to consider our ethics. The only requirements for being a democracy is that we cannot take authoritarian or fanatic authoritarian. That should be kind of self-explanatory, but it is unfortunate in my mind. Authoritarian is a bit easier to play with. It tends to help you out a bit more. Now, don't get me wrong, regular egalitarian is fantastic as well in its own right. It's just the authoritarian playstyle tends to be simpler, and the policy benefits as well as the edicts that it gives you, in my mind, are a lot better than the egalitarian counterpart. So overall, I think all of these put together, we can come up with a pretty good rating on the A to F scale. Now, looking at democracy as a whole on the A to F scale, I feel it's not terrible. It's not within the F tier. But comparing it to the other authority types, being, the oligarchic, dictatorial, and imperial, democracy just loses a lot and doesn't gain much of anything. You're losing out on the agenda benefit that the other government authority types have, and simply just gaining additional unity that is based upon your monthly unity production anyways, can be effectively worthless for a lot of empires, especially since you have to jump through loopholes to get it. The benefit you get from having democracy as well just isn't super useful within the early to mid game, where you want your benefits to kind of stack up and help you. It can be useful in the late game, it could be something you could pivot into, but overall it just feels weaker than the other government types, especially when you can consider taking something like oligarchic, where it gives you a lot of similar playstyles and benefits, just with additional benefits and fewer downsides and loopholes to jump through. So overall, I think democracy probably falls into the D+ to C- category. It just lacks quite a bit and doesn't gain much really to kind of justify the loopholes that you have to jump through. If mandates were a bit more interesting or better, just overall, then you could consider taking it, but in its current state, democracy is just kind of lackluster. Thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a blessed day.